One of the worst things about preparing for an exam is knowing that you've got so much content to get through, but you're not sure exactly how to get through it all. Well, in today's video, I want to share with you guys my method of building a revision timetable that allows me to keep track of what I need to get through, what I've got through, and ultimately to feel confident before sitting the exam. What is going on, you guys? My name is Matt and I'm a first year medical student here at the University of Manchester, and I post weekly videos to this channel about all things medicine, productivity, and also how I balance the things that I love, such as travel. So if that sounds like something that you are interested in watching more of, hit the subscribe button down below and also hit the bell notification so you get notified when I post new content. Having a revision timetable is not something that I have always done. It's been one of those things that I always hear people talking about, like tutors saying that you need to build one in order to track what you're doing and you're gonna find it way more effective, but I never actually did it until I started university, and I cannot explain to you how helpful it is to just put aside a couple of hours before you start getting into the revision in order to build a timetable. The main benefits of doing this is it allows you to see exactly what content that you need to cover for your exam. It then allows you to structure it in a way that is realistic and allows you to stay on track of what needs doing every single day. And it will also allow you at the end of that revision period to feel confident and comfortable that you've not only done the best that you possibly can, but you've also pretty much got through everything. So without further ado, I want to show you the steps that I went through to build a revision timetable for my first important summative exam in med school. And this was an exam that I sat last week, and I gave myself about 6 weeks revision for it, and that was just about enough time to cover everything and give myself some leeway. So the first step in building this timetable involved me looking for a template that I like the look of. So for that, I went to calendarpedia.com and I downloaded a template, template 11. I like the look of it, pretty simple. So the first step that I decided to do was literally just to start filling in this timetable with the month, December, and I did a duplicate version by copying it all and just pasting it. Now I've gone ahead and filled out all the dates, but considering I did not start my revision until actually on the 21st, I need to go ahead and blank out the rest of this timetable. So the first step for me after doing that is to fill in the essential dates that I cannot change. The test on the 27th, so if we put in SEM test. Now I actually had a second exam which was less important. It was called a progress test, but this is not necessarily assessing the content that we're getting through. It's just more of an indicator as to, what kind of exam that we should expect in the later years. So I'm going to put that in 2 because that was another really long exam that took most of the day. Go ahead and put the progress test in and the SEM test, so now we can see exactly what dates the exams are in. Then I go ahead and put in the days that I'm not going to be working for. I was giving myself Christmas Day off. I wasn't going to do any revision over that period. Now, the great thing about doing this is we can now see exactly how many days I have free to get through all of the topics that I need to get through. Now, the way that we do things at Manchester is we study medicine based on different cases, and this semester test that we're examined on the 27th was assessing 8 cases. This meant that I could do a simple calculation giving me an indicator as to how many days I can contribute towards studying for each case. I wanted to make sure that I had got through all the content at least once before the progress test, giving me a week and a day or so just to spend going over topics that I didn't necessarily understand or I wanted to revisit. That meant I needed to get through all 8 cases by the 17th of January, which just about meant that I could give myself 3 days studying towards each individual case. So now we know that I have 3 days for each case. I can now start thinking about actually just breaking down in a bit more detail exactly what each case consists of. What I'd do is I would write down case 1 and then figuring out what are the key themes, what are the key topics that I need to get through in each of these individual cases. And the way that I did that is I would go to OneMed website and I would look at the intended learning objectives, which show us exactly what kind of things we need to cover and get from that case. So I'd look at these learning objectives, and I'd also look at the learning agendas, which we as a PBL group came up with, all the questions that we considered are relevant to this case. And by doing that, it allowed me to identify exactly what are the main topics that I need to be focusing on. And in each case, this will consist of maybe 8 to 12 key themes. So, as you can see right here, I've gone ahead and filled out all of the main key topics, and I've also given it a color code just so that when it comes to building the timetable, I can just visually see immediately what case I'm doing on what date. So once I've done that, I will now go ahead and complete that for the remaining 7 cases. You gotta remember, you can amend this as you go along, and you probably will amend this because at the start, what we're trying to do here is we're just trying to build a sort of rough skeleton. It doesn't have to be in the most detail. This shouldn't take you too long. You should just go through the intended learning objectives, the learning agendas that you guys have created as a group, and it should be quite self-explanatory what the main topics are of each of these cases. I now know that I have about 3 days to spend on each of these cases. You probably notice here, I've given myself an extra day for case 5, and that's just because immunology was a really beefy topic with lots of stuff to get through. So I just wanted to give myself a 4th day to get through that content. But as I knew I was starting with case 1, this meant that I could start filling out what I was going to be getting through on first day, second day, and third day. Now, as you can see, this is essentially the workflow that I went ahead and used in order to fulfill this entire timetable. The way that I went about doing it is I didn't do all this at the start. Every single time the next case came about, I would start moving things around. And the reason for that is it is inevitable that on some days maybe you feel a little bit more tired and you don't necessarily get through as much as you want to get through. And it might get to a point that on the 24th, on the Friday, when I should be starting case 2, I didn't quite finish case 1. So it would have meant that I would have colored that in with case 1, and then I would have moved everything across 1. But the benefit in building a revision timetable and giving yourself, a week or so before the exam is it means you've got all of this period here of just time where you can catch up or move things around and revisit topics. I want to show you exactly what the final timetable looks like. Now, this is the finalized version of the timetable that I made, and I just want to talk you through exactly how I came to having this as my final timetable. We can see first off, I started on the 21st with case 1 and I stuck to my guns. I did case 1 in 3 days. However, whilst doing the revision, I discovered there was actually an extra topic that I probably could have focused a bit more time on, and that was placentation. I realized that I don't have time to get through that, and I added that to the missed list, and that was something that I could revisit at the end before my exam. You'll probably see that I spent 3 days doing case 1, and then I went on to case 5, 6, and 7. Case 5, 6, and 7, and then case 8 as well. And the reason for that is Manchester created a mid-sem test testing case 5 to case 8. So I saw this as a good opportunity to just cover case 5 to case 8 and then sit this exam under exam conditions, and this would give me an opportunity to see how well my revision techniques are translating into a sort of test exam. I would like to highlight that an important part of using this kind of revision timetable, it is reliant on you having done work throughout the course. Especially if you study in a course like medicine, you cannot rely on cramming at the end and getting all of these cases done in 3 days. It's just not possible. So by making sure that I was staying on top of my revision throughout the course, it meant that when it came to doing this revision timetable, these 3 days were just really spent filling out that question bank, going over the content again for a second time round, and just making questions on each case more thorough. And this basically meant that once I got to the 19th of January, I could spend that week before the exam only doing Anki Dex. That week before the exam was a 3rd time I'm covering that content again. The first time was building the question banks and covering it in the course, doing the PBL sessions. The second time is through building this timetable, building the question banks even further and going over the questions again that I built. And then finally, the week before the exam, it allowed me to spend that time just going over the content a third time. And this essentially meant that I felt confident. I didn't overwhelm myself. I didn't feel absolutely exhausted at the end of it. And I was able to still juggle the things that I love to do, such as my job, my DJing, making YouTube videos, editing videos, going to the gym, and also swimming. It allowed me time to socialize and have a good balance. And I think this is really, really important because I think as a med student especially, it is a long game. You're going to be spending a huge proportion of the next 5 years of your life constantly revising and studying. But by building a timetable, it allows you to develop a good relationship with the work that you've got to get done. But that is pretty much all I've got to say on this topic of building a timetable. So look, I hope this video has been of some help for you. If you have enjoyed it, of course, hit the like button down below. Make sure you subscribe as well and hit the bell notification so you get notified every time I post more videos to this channel. But as always, I will see you in the next one.